Welcome to the Plant-Free MD podcast with Dr. Anthony Chaffee, where we discuss diet and nutrition and how this affects health and chronic disease, and show you how you can use this to optimize your health and happiness, both mentally and physically. All right. Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Anthony Chaffee. I'm here with another episode of the Plant-Free MD podcast. And today I have a very interesting guest. It's a friend of mine that I've been talking to online, going back to the last few months. And very interesting story because he's actually been a carnivore for basically about the last 40 years or so. Is that right?
39 years, yes.
9 years. Yeah, that's awesome. So tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into this in the first place, and how you've been just such a breakaway from the curve for so long.
Well, this diet actually, a lot of people I've seen, like on your channel and other channels, they've had health issues. They had a reason why they had to change their diet. But I did this when I was younger. My biggest reason is that I was one of the smallest kids in junior high. And if you saw the pictures of me compared to the other kids, it was just mind-boggling. The girls were bigger than me. That's how bad it was. And, my parents were very health conscious, especially my dad. So they were always trying to get me to eat what was supposed to be good, such as oatmeal and whole grain bread and, all the stuff that they told you about in the 70s. Don't eat butter, don't eat lard, don't eat too much meat because that's bad. So and then the other thing was, they had all these vitamins and supplements. They had like brewer's yeast and bone meal and vitamin C and just fish oil and all these things. And the only thing I ever did like was the cod liver oil they would give me, which my mother thought was terrible. And the liver that they would give me sometimes, which I loved. I would even eat it raw. But I got the idea from a crazy TV show named The Dukes of Hazzard, which had Big Fat Boss Hogg. He ate raw liver, and everybody was grossed out by it. So what happened to me as I was growing up, I got to the point where when I was younger, I tried to fit in with the other kids, but it never worked. And as time went on, it just got worse. I mean, elementary school wasn't so bad, but by the time I got to junior high, it was unbearable. The constant harassment, getting picked on and everything. So eventually what happened is I thought, well, if I can't fit in with the world, maybe I need to do the opposite. And that might be a better way. Just do my own thing and forget about what everybody else thinks. That's how it started.
Well, that's probably a good lesson for most people to learn, is just to not worry about it, And I think that was Joseph Campbell who said, it doesn't matter what you think or believe, somebody somewhere hates you for it. And so you might as well just do what you feel is the right thing to do and just don't worry about what other people think.
Right.
Yeah. So
that was the beginning of it. And of course, it's gotten more extreme since then.
Yeah. And so you went, at the time, you're not going to eat any plants at all. You're only going to eat meat. What was it? I mean, and then you've been sort of strict on that since then. Is that right?
Well, it started, what happened was when I finished junior high, which was 9th grade, I was getting ready for high school. And then I was helping my dad build a carport. We were trying to put some wood down and I fell down and I broke my arm. So I was kind of stuck in the house, and it came down to my mother was taking classes because she was getting renewing her certificate as a teacher, and my dad was working as an aircraft mechanic. So I was stuck in the house by myself in the summer. And there wasn't much to choose from. So it came down to, well, I wasn't really good at cooking. So I thought, what would be the easiest thing to cook? And ever since I was a kid, I always liked meat. Meat was my thing. In fact, the few times that we did eat out, we usually went to a buffet. There was a restaurant that was called the Sweden House Smorgasbord. And, the typical all-you-can-eat place. They had everything from fruits to salads to meats. And one of the things I always liked was the roast beef. They had somebody that had the little paper hat, and then they'd carve the roast beef. And I'd go there and I'd keep getting it and getting it. It was something I liked. I also liked the fried chicken and the fish and the shrimp. So when I was stuck by myself in the house, I thought, what would be the easiest thing to cook? And just meat. Mm-hmm. And of course, we had hamburger meat. We had some pieces of steak. We had some seafood. So I just had to teach myself how to cook that food. And it tasted good. It was convenient, and I wasn't starving.
Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. But for those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And then as far as just the not eating all the other things, how did that come into play where you just said, all right, yeah, I'm not going to touch any of that stuff anymore?
Well, that was actually purely by accident, because when I was a kid, I used to have problems. I would get headaches once in a while. I used to get gas, which was really embarrassing. And I noticed that when I didn't eat the bread and I didn't eat any of the pasta or the rice or any of the other stuff, that didn't seem to be a problem. And then the other thing that happened to me over that summer, I wasn't afraid, because I was thinking, I was just dreading having to go to high school and get picked on and harassed and all that. But then when the time came around, I wasn't really dreading it. Even though my arm was broken, I was delayed by a couple of weeks. I just felt like everything was just a lot easier to manage. I used to get upset. I'd throw a tantrum, cry about things, get mad. And it didn't happen anymore. It just got to the point where it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And then, I mean, it's really interesting too, that you sort of intuitively, went to eating what worked for your body and what made you feel better. And that was great that your parents let you get away with that. Mine did not.
Well, actually my parents fought it, and it was kind of funny because they didn't want me to eat all that meat. They were saying, well, my mom had breast cancer. She had breast cancer, I think it was 1978. And I started this diet in 1983. So they were afraid, I'm going to get cancer because I eat too much meat. But then my dad had said, well, he's a kid, what's the difference? And the other thing was, they had tried many different things to try to get me to get bigger because I was small. But they gave me stuff like protein powder and Ovaltine and all this other stuff, which I absolutely hated. I just the thought of that makes me feel sick.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I can't even think about it at this point.
Yeah.
But it came down to my parents. It was like, well, what are we going to do? We can try to force them. They would encourage me to eat the brown rice, but a lot of times what I would do when they give me the healthy food, our dining room was next to the window and we have a lot of ducks around. So what I would do is I'd wait until the ducks were there and I'd start putting the food outside. The ducks would eat it. They'd eat the bread. They'd eat the rice, whatever. And I would just go for the meat. So they figured, just let him eat whatever he's going to eat. Plus, since we went to the buffet 2 or 3 times a week, I'd hit that and just eat the meat. So it got to the point where, don't fight him.
Yeah.
But then the real miracle happened, which none of us expected. I went from being one of the shortest kids in school to the second tallest when I graduated high school. It's just incredible. I couldn't believe it myself.
Yeah. So how tall are you now?
6'6".
Awesome. Yeah, that's a recovery story right there. Yeah.
I had, and I have some pictures that I kept from some of the old photo albums and the junior high yearbook and all that. And you can kind of see how it progressed from being really small to just getting really big. The only thing is that the last time that I went to see some of the high school reunion, I was the only one that looked pretty much the same as when I was in high school. I haven't changed that much.
Yeah. And which is cool. Now, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
54.
There you go. And you certainly don't look like you're in your 50s at all, by any stretch of imaginations. Yeah.
I've been mistaken for 35 more than once.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can see I have a full head of hair and no gray hair. So I think that has something to do with the diet.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. I wish that I was able to pull that one off with my parents. They did. That was a no go for them. Because I would have only eaten meat if I had the opportunity to. That's all I would cook for myself. I remember always looking in the fridge. You'd open up the fridge and you just be like, "There's no food in here. It's just ingredients, It's packed full." You're like, "Where's the food? There's no food. There's just just leaves and produce and ingredients for something else. He was like, what the hell is there to eat? And now and then you'd be like some steak stuffed in somewhere, like, okay, I'll get that out. And that's the only thing that I would eat, that I would want to eat if I was cooking for myself. And, when I moved out into college, that's all I ever bought was just meat and, just like chicken and things, and then beef. And I was still sort of, avoiding fat, just because that's what you were supposed to do. You're supposed to avoid fat. And then every now and then I'd buy some like salad stuff or whatever. I guess you're supposed to have a salad. But when I intuitively would eat that, that's all I wanted to eat either as well. And then of course, when I went to just not eating plants, I did that, pretty wholeheartedly. Well, that's cool. I wish I'd started it earlier though, so I could actually have gotten some of the growth benefits, because I would have been much happier at 6'6", I can tell you. Well,
you seem to have done very well. You look extremely healthy. I mean, you're not skinny like me.
Yeah. Well, I feel healthy, and that's good. Unfortunately, I started doing carnivore when, my growth plates had all sealed off. So I was sort of, at my full height at that point, where it would have been sort of fun to see this sort of, in the middle of puberty or early puberty, and really gotten a shot up with it. And that would have been great. Yeah. And it certainly sounds like it worked for you.
Yeah, the amazing thing is that I never had any growing pains. I didn't even think about it. It just kind of happened on its own. It was such a smooth transition. You would think that anyone that grew as fast as I did, it would be painful in some way, but it wasn't. In fact, it was the opposite. Other kids I knew had growing pains. I never had any. I never even got acne when I was a teenager. Not one pimple.
Nice. Yeah.
And the other thing is too, I deliberately tried to eat as much fat as I could. I used to eat butter whenever I could get my hands on it. I would eat lard right out of the tub. I always went for the fat. Yeah. And they told me, oh, that's going to kill you. You're going to get a heart attack. I even told my parents, look, I'd rather die of a heart attack than live small like that. I'm just going to eat all this fat. And if it kills me, it'll be like that. I won't be weak and helpless. I'll just be dead.
Yeah. Well, and that's yeah. I mean, it's so great that you actually like intuitively just went for that, and it obviously had like a huge effect. And that's something that I think is obviously missing in today, is not getting enough fat, not getting proper nutrition. But I think the fat is a big one. It's such a big one. It's so important for our neural development, as well as our actual musculature as well. You need cholesterol, for your hormones and for muscle growth. I mean, cholesterol is actually found in recent studies to be an independent factor in muscle growth and hypertrophy. When you're exercising, you need more cholesterol in order to do that. And it probably has a lot to do with hormonal regulation as much as anything else. But it was interesting anyway. And so that's very interesting that you just sort of naturally went to that. And so the classic things would be, okay, well, after about 10 years, your gut health's going to be horrible, and you're going to have colon cancer and all these polyps and things like that. How'd that one turn out?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because they always told me the meat's going to give you constipation. You'll never be able to, I won't go to the bathroom but once a week. Well, the joke's on them, because I go at least once a day, most of the time twice a day. It's not a lot, but it's a regular thing, usually after breakfast and then sometime after dinner. So I've never had constipation in my life. The only time I've had digestive issues is when I get the flu. When I get the flu, I may get diarrhea. I may get gas. I may get like a grumbling or some kind of weird noise, but that's really been it. It has not damaged my digestion in any way.
Yeah, good. And there's and no problems, no diagnosing, going to the doctor and saying, "Oh, well, this is off. You got to be careful about something. Maybe you have some issues with your health in some manner." Has that ever been raised?
Well, the problem is I haven't been to a doctor since 1996. It's just the last time I went, I had to get a checkup. It was for an insurance plan that I was in, but I haven't had a lot of money. So what I would do, I would just, I couldn't afford health insurance anymore. So I gave up on it. And I thought, well, I mean, if I get sick, I get sick. But no, I haven't been to a doctor. In fact, I don't know how my cholesterol is. I don't even know what blood type I have. I have no idea. It's like I haven't been to a dentist since 1986.
Yeah.
Because the same reason I got broken teeth and they're crooked. But what happened to me when I was younger, my teeth grew in like crowded. And then they wanted to put braces on when my parents had money. And I said, look, they want to pull the teeth in the back. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm just going to take my chances. But the funny thing is that when I switched my diet, even though the wisdom teeth came in, they were not impacted in any way. They managed to fit. It's like the jaw got bigger, when that came. I don't know what happened, and I haven't had a cavity since I was a kid.
Yeah. Well, the jaw does get bigger. And, that's the thing that, when you started doing it, you were still growing, you're still developing, you still had an opportunity to do that. And your jaw will get bigger and wider, and you will have room for your wisdom teeth. So that is interesting, because it's a demonstration of that effect as well, because early on you weren't eating the right way. And so your jaw was smaller, your teeth were crowded and crooked, which is not genetic. That is purely nutritional. And and environment, chewing on things and whatever, that can have a big effect on mouth and tooth development. But then you switch over to carnivore, especially high fat, and all of a sudden your jaw is growing big enough, and now your wisdom teeth come in. And that's the thing, we did not get really impacted wisdom teeth, even 100 years ago. That was a very rare thing, except in poor, impoverished areas that they really weren't able to get meat, as a staple of their diet. But in the caveman fossils, before the agricultural revolution, there's no impacted teeth. All the wisdom teeth have erupted and are fully formed and developed, mouth teeth and jaws. So that is not something that should happen. And that's even in the dentistry journals, that this is nutritional. It's not genetic. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that at the time, but it seemed to be a side effect. There's a lot of things that happened that I didn't expect to happen, which did. So, now. And, you have to realize that until 2020, I didn't even know that this diet was a thing. I didn't know about you or Sean Baker or anybody. It's just that when we had the pandemic, usually I'm outside. I don't spend a lot of time on the computer, but I had to be at the house. And it's like, well, I had taken care of my mom for years, and then she passed away, and then we had the pandemic, but then I ended up just going online, and then I don't remember who was the first one that I saw. I don't think it was yours. I think it might have been, it was either that fruity guy Saladino or it was Sean Baker, one of those two. Yeah. But you came later, and you seemed like the one that was, I don't know, I just liked your channel better. That's why I was corresponding with you and sending you messages, because I was impressed with you.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I think everyone has something to contribute to this. Certainly, Dr. Baker, I've tons of respect for. I don't think I've come across too many people that are as knowledgeable as he is. And same with Saladino, though. I mean, we disagree on the fruit and honey thing and the sugar thing, but I think basically everything else. I don't think I've really heard much apart from that I would disagree with. So I think they're all good resources. And then obviously, Dr. Barry is fantastic. I really like him as well. And
my friend that's 76, he likes Dr. Barry a lot. He likes to watch his videos, and he has some good information, but he has too many people following him. I don't like to watch channels that have a lot of people, especially in the chat, because you can't interact with them at all. So, I mean, there's good information, but I'd rather have, on a channel where there's a lot less competition. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, competition, also noise. It's just and it's hard doing those lives as well, because you're trying to keep track of questions and things like that, and there's just the page is just scrolling, and you try to sort of scroll up to just hang on one question, and then there's just 50 more that come after it. It's difficult, and especially on Instagram, that's impossible. Because you only see one or two comments at a time, and it scrolls up. So you look at oh, what's that? And it's gone already. It's already gone. And
I've never used Instagram, believe it or not.
Oh, don't ever start. It's awful. No,
I'm not a big social media person. Let's put it that way.
No, I'm not either. I hate it. It's a necessary evil. Unfortunately, these are the platforms that you get your message out, and so it's good for that, and I appreciate it on that level, certainly. But my God, is it a time sink? And I would way rather be like you and just be outside doing things and enjoying life, than sort of just stuck on my phone all the time, which is what I unfortunately have to do because this is how I sort of do my work. That's the medium.
If you saw what kind of phone I used, you would laugh.
I would probably be jealous is what I would be. That's it. That's awesome. I would totally, I would totally go for that if I could,
And I haven't had a landline in years, but I use voice over IP, but I don't use a cell phone. I had a cell phone for many years. I had one of the Motorola bricks, which I have on my shelf somewhere. And I used to be in contact, but it when I had my business, but when we closed the business, I didn't want to be, on the electronic leash anymore. It just got to the point where it was nothing but a bother.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is sort of freeing not being, touch your phone, that people can just constantly message you. You sort of feel a bit concerned though. You leave, like now I leave the house, I don't have my phone. I'm like, oh my God, I'm just detached from the world. And, but like, it's just weird. You have this sort of sense of, unease when you're going around without your phone because, well, what if I need to Google something? Like, my God, I might have to like remember to look it up later. Like, well, how's that going to work?
Well, I do carry around an old cell phone just for 911 calls in case there's an emergency. But it's like friends of mine say, well, you need a cell phone. What happens if your car breaks down? I said, that's why I got a toolbox behind the seat. Yeah. I've never had to call anyone. I always fix it on the side of the road. And then, what if somebody wants to contact you? Well, who's going to contact me? My friends know that they can call me at home. When I'm home, I'll answer the phone. When I'm not home, who knows where I am? Yeah. I may be working or I may be out in the Everglades walking around. You never know.
Yeah. Well, if someone gets only, well, then they can send a pigeon. I don't know. But like it, but that was the thing too, it made it a bit better, I think, for personal interactions because you would you make plans. People had to keep those plans a lot more than that. And it's so easy to like just break plans now. You can just text like, oh yeah, oh sorry, I'm gonna be, it's just like you have plans with someone who's like, hey, let's meet here at this time. Oh shoot, oh gosh, it's just like you can just break these plans so easily. Whereas when you have that sort of face to face, like, hey, you're meeting someone here, you better be there on time, or else you're leaving that person waiting. They're going to be pretty pissed off, because that's quite inconsiderate, or you just don't show up at all. And you're like, are you kidding me? Like that's something that wasn't really acceptable. But now it's really easy to get away with that sort of thing. Whereas before, you had someone, sort of stand you up and be like, all right, well, they're dead to me and I can't do that again. And you sort of found out who was a responsible and reliable person pretty easily that way as well. So yeah, we miss out on that too.
That's right. And the thing is, a lot of people, they do this text messaging. I said, by the time you take your big fingers and try to push the little things on the phone, just call me, just pick up the phone, talk to me, we'll be done. And that's it. I don't have to text anything.
Yeah.
But nobody even remembers phone numbers anymore. If you want to call someone, I got to look, you don't know the phone number? Yeah. I said, well, when I was a kid, I knew everybody's phone number. I know like 40 phone numbers right now. I can call anybody I want. I don't need a phone.
Yeah. I used to know that as well. When I was a kid, I would just every now and then I just sort of write out all the phone numbers I had. It got up to like 130, 140 numbers that I had memorized. And every now and then I would just be like, oh, what if I forget them? Oh, would that be bad? And so I just sort of write them all out. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. I'm
right
about those. And I don't know any of those now. I don't know any of them.
See?
And I remember my childhood phone numbers. Fair enough. I use them a lot. And my phone number now, and that's basically it. And so now I've got and so I've got 4 phone numbers in my head. 3 of them are useless because they're for houses that no one lives in anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I kept my childhood phone number. I still have it, but no one's ever called me from back then. No. But I did keep the number. I converted it to voice over IP. And the good thing is wherever I live, I can take the number with me. So I'm not tied to a location anymore.
Well, that's true too. Yeah. Well, I guess that's the benefit of a cell phone as well. Like I still have my cell phone number from years ago. Well, that's cool, man. So what do you do now, and how do you find that this helps you and affects you? Like, so you're eating, what exactly are you eating now? You're eating sort of 2-3 times a day, or what are you doing?
Yeah, I generally eat at least 3 times a day. Sometimes I eat 4 times a day. But and it depends on what I have. Lately I haven't been able to eat as much as I normally would because the price of meat has gone into the stratosphere. But I used to be able to get stuff marked down so cheap you wouldn't believe it. I was eating for half of what everybody else I know was eating.
Yeah.
Because I could get ground meat as cheap as 99 cents a pound, and I was getting ribeye steak for like $4 a pound. Because what would happen is if they couldn't sell it, it's going to expire the next day, they'd mark it down at least 50%, sometimes more than that. So I was eating 3-4 pounds of meat a day, no problem. Yeah. And I'd usually knock out, 1 or 2 pounds per meal. But now it's either shoulder cuts, which are cheaper, of beef, or ground beef. I usually get the fattiest stuff I can, which is like 73%, lean, and the rest of it's fat. And most of the time I'll cook it up like a stew. I just put the beef in a pot and just, stir it up a little bit. Sometimes I'll add some plant material. For example, I'll put a tomato in there from the garden so that it'll turn it into like a little soup. Otherwise, I just make a patty out of it and eat it.
Yeah. Nice. And so how you feeling? You feel like, a lot of energy, you can sort of go further than other people?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm the only one I know that if I need to get up at a certain time, I will get up at that time. I usually get up at 8 o'clock in the morning. I go to bed around midnight, sometimes 1, sometimes later. I've been in bed sometimes 3 in the morning, and I still get up at 8. And as soon as I get up, I can get right out of bed. I don't take any coffee or anything. I go straight outside and look for eggs. So that's what I normally do in the morning.
Nice.
So I'll put my shoes on, I'll go outside. Sometimes I'm in the underwear, sometimes I put clothes on, and I'll just go looking for eggs. That's the first thing I do.
So you have chickens then?
No, there's ducks. I live in the suburbs, so we can't have chickens, but the ducks, they kind of roam wild, so I feed them all the time.
All right.
And they leave me eggs under the bushes and near the house and all kinds of places.
Oh, cool. Oh, very good. That's funny. You can probably get. I was thinking too, like you're down near the Everglades. Is a gator? Is that possible?
Well, I mean, I haven't seen them, but I eat iguana. We have iguanas taking over. Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Well, they were taking over the neighborhood really bad for a while, but I've eaten probably hundreds of those things. A lot of times I'll just grab them by the tail and I got them, and then just whack their head off and carve them up. The normal way I eat iguana, I have a couple of videos on my channel that shows how you boil the iguana and peel the skin. Mm-hmm. So I love iguana.
No kidding. All right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't eat duck anymore because now the ducks are kind of my pets, but I've eaten duck before. Yeah. I've had people pay me to get rid of a nuisance duck, and I'll bring the duck here, and then I let them go with the other ducks. And if they get along, fine. But some of the ducks are aggressive, and they'll fight, and they'll peck at the other ducks. So then I move Ducky to the special area, and I feed him for a couple of weeks. And then next thing you know, he's in my refrigerator.
Okay. Yeah. Like, well, I guess that, you're sort of doing the same sort of things you would in the wild, and hunting and trapping and all these sorts of things, just in the sort of the suburban version of that. Ducks and
that's right. Yeah. And you'd be amazed, some of the wealthiest neighborhoods near here have the worst iguana problem. They take over. They burrow in the side of the canal. They go in ponds. They burrow holes in the yard. They go all over. I have a friend of mine, his wife is terrified of lizards. So it's like a nightmare every time they see an iguana. And I've caught some that were 4 feet long. I mean, there's some really big iguanas. And I mean, you'd be surprised how much meat is in one of those things.
Yeah, no kidding. Like they have a big iguana problem in those areas because they're not enough people to eat them. Not enough people.
Well, that's it. They don't really have any natural predators other than a few people that eat iguana.
Yeah, and it's a few. You're their natural predator. Yeah.
There you go. I was fixing an air conditioner last week. I had the cover off of it, and then the guy's like, "Oh, there's an iguana." So I ran over there. I grabbed the iguana. I put it in my truck. Put a tape around it, and then when I came home later that day, I had iguana for dinner.
Yeah, well, it's definitely good with meat prices going up. It's definitely
that's right.
It definitely helps that.
That's right. And iguanas don't have the personality that the ducks do. Sometimes I look at the duck, I feel sorry for him. Other times, the ducks do have sharp claws and they are kind of aggressive sometimes. So some of them are mean, others are friendly. The friendly ones usually end up out in the yard and they get fed, and the mean ones, they end up in the refrigerator.
You're using some unnatural selection to get to nicer ducks, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. In this neighborhood, all my neighbors know me. I've been able to control the population very effectively because I tell them, whenever you see a nest, call me and I will take care of it. Because what will happen is these ducks can lay 20 eggs and they'll hatch, and there will be ducklings everywhere, all over the neighborhood. And then they fall in the drains, and then they have problems, and people feel sorry for them. But if you eat the eggs first, there won't be any ducklings. True. A lot of times I'll put plastic eggs in place of the real ones, and the mama will sit there for a while and then eventually abandon the nest. And as long as I can keep an eye out where the nests are, I can control the population.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
We may only get 10 or 20 every season that hatch. The rest of them, the eggs are eaten. So we don't have hundreds like some neighborhoods. Some neighborhoods are so full of ducks, it's unreal.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And then that is a good way of keeping that sort of that population control in that area as well. So it doesn't get in like an infestation problem like the iguanas, which you're also helping with.
That's right. I don't see any iguanas in my yard anymore. I haven't seen one here in like 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, well, they've learned. The word has gotten out.
Well, that's it. They're smart enough to know not to come here. They were eating my bananas. They were eating papayas. They were eating, because I got fruit trees all over the place. And I'm actually a very good gardener.
Yeah,
I'm probably the best gardener in this whole area.
Yeah,
I have the green thumbs like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah,
because I've always been a plant grower, plant person, which is ironic because I don't eat plants, and yet I grow all kinds of plants.
Yeah. Well, they're also very pretty and enjoyable to, have a tended garden as well. That's certainly true.
And they feed the animals too.
True. And then you and those animals feed you. So that's good.
That's right. Plus, I give a lot of the fruits away to friends of mine, like the bananas I grow. Oh, they love those bananas. They got the little finger bananas and the burro bananas and the plantains and everything. Yeah. And I will eat plantains occasionally. But plantains, as you know, are the hard green bananas. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of like a potato, but without the toxins. Mm-hmm. Because, potatoes being a root and the nightshade, that's not something that you really want to eat.
Yeah.
But, if you ever have a taste for French fries or whatever, you just get some plantains, cut them with a fry cutter, and fry them in beef tallow. Not the healthiest thing in the world, but it's better than French fries from, fast food place.
Sure. And then so have you, because you've been doing this for so long, is that something you've looked into as far as optimal health and toxins in plants and things like that?
Well, I really didn't look into it until 2020. Now, I instinctively knew that most plant parts are toxic. Being a gardener, I used to tell, I had some vegetarian and friends, some of them even went vegan. And I said, look, you eat plants, but if you go around my yard, how many of these plants are edible? Maybe 2%, maybe 1%. Mm-hmm. And not all parts of a plant are edible. I mean, I could give you delicious bananas, but you're not going to eat the leaves off the banana plant because you'll get sick.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not really poisonous, but they are toxic. Mm. And if they weren't toxic, animals and insects would eat everything. There'd be nothing out there. You'd go outside, it'd be all stripped. It'd be nothing but a few dead stems and, maybe a couple of seeds that haven't sprouted yet. Because without poison, how's the plant going to defend itself?
That's it.
And I kind of knew that, just from growing plants.
Yeah, which is funny because I mean this isn't actually a new concept. Like that's something that's just very well known in horticulture and botany, and then just be, that just can't possibly be true. Oh well, if it's it's a toxin, then it's just a trace amount. It's not going to cause anything. Like that's dead ass wrong. I mean that's just your own ignorance spilling over, and just because you don't know something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I remember, Lane Norton says like, oh, well, if plants are, trying to kill you, then they're not doing a really good job, because, all the studies show that people who eat more plants live longer. Like, first of all, that's not true. It's not true in the least. But second of all, you have diabetes, heart disease, cancer, autoimmune diseases, all these different sorts of problems that can be directly related and attributable to these plant toxins, like I think it's actually doing a pretty good job. And, when the fact that, 5 kidney beans undercooked can put you in the hospital, the denial of the presence of those toxins is pretty laughable. Say, oh, well, we don't eat kidney beans when they're raw. Right. Because we're not adapted to, we're not able to suss out those chemicals and those defense chemicals naturally, which means this is an unnatural food source, right? You should be able to just digest and properly, appropriate this tissue into your own tissue. But it's obviously not possible. So there's so many things wrong with that. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's just the pure, ignorance to this entire body of knowledge, which, we've had for a very long time. You as a gardener just know this, and most people who work in a garden know this. Anyone who's studied botany knows this, whether or not they eat plants or not. They at least understand the concept that plants can eat, or plants can cause harm. In animal husbandry, this is also very well known. There are a number of diseases that are specifically caused by the animal eating outside of its normal natural diet, right? And we have names for these things. And that's like, oh yeah, that, big head, that comes from, eating these plants and it causes this problem, right? And so it's very well known, it's very well understood, and it's completely ignored in human health and nutrition, which, obviously is why I'm sort of banging this drum, just because like this is a major contributor to disease. And even people like Lane and others, I mean, they still make the assertion that eating the wrong thing will cause these problems, but then they just like forget that means there's something in the food that causes problems, right? And that the problems that come from these things, like, oh, it's these processed foods. Okay, what are the processed foods? It's processed plants. It's all processed plant products, right? And processed and added sugars and things like that. Well, sugar comes from plants, right? And and they're adding sugar to carbs and plants and all that sort of stuff. Oh, but it's no. It's processed plants. You're just, even if you go vegetarian, your health improves, you're just replacing, a worse plant product with a less bad plant product. That's all you're doing, And so, and of course there are varying degrees of these toxins, but they do exist. That's a hard fact. I don't need a epidemiological study to tell me that. I'll take a botany textbook over any sort of nonsense in epidemiology any day of the week. And, but that's, it's great to hear that, like this is actually, something that is known in the gardener community. Like you weren't even trying to do this and going from my angle, you're just like, oh, actually these things have poison.
Yeah. And you can see it a lot of times when you have a plant, like for example, in my yard, I grow angel's trumpet, which is a toxic plant. And there's a type of hornworm that eats it. It's the same hornworm that eats tobacco and, some other nightshade plants. And what'll happen is when it starts to eat this plant, it'll strip the leaves, it'll eat the whole plant, and the plant will go dormant. Then when it starts to put on new leaves, it becomes much more toxic. So the plant will secrete more toxins. So that way you start to see them eating again, and then they die off because the plant is designed in such a way that it can fight that. Now, I've seen other plants like milkweed that don't do that. It'll sprout up in the yard. The moths will come and they'll lay their eggs, and the caterpillars will eat the whole thing. Then it'll regrow again, and after 2 or 3 times, it's dead. The plant can no longer survive because it wasn't able to kill off the insects that were eating it. So you don't see that in the yard anymore. It'll come and it'll disappear. But other plants, they keep regenerating. It's like the oak trees we have here. When the leaves first come out, they're edible, and the moths and the beetles will eat them. And then when they start to get hard, they don't eat them. Even the orange trees that I have, the limes, the orange, all the citrus, when citrus leaves are green and harder and older, they're immune to just about anything. But when they first come out, when they're young leaves, that's when they get attacked by most of the insects. So it's true of the plant kingdom. You can just see the way they are. Now, another thing that I've noticed, and I don't know if it's because of the carnivore diet or genetics, but I'm not affected by poison ivy or poison wood. I've always been a big fan of poisonous plants. I have a poisonwood tree in my yard. I had a manchineel tree, which is the most toxic plant in Florida, I think in the whole United States. the little rosary peas, those toxic little seeds. And, none of those plants bother me. The only thing that really bothers me is a plant that we have called velvet bean. Velvet bean has this fur that grows on the pods. And if I even get near that stuff, it makes me itch like crazy. It is an absolute horrific plant. So that's the one plant that I do not want to go anywhere near.
Yeah, that's funny. And that's true. Plants also will increase the production of these toxins when they're being attacked. So if they'll get like a fungal infection or insect infestation or something like that, they'll start increasing the toxins designed to defend them against that bug or that pathogen. And so when you get, and this is true for vegetables that we eat too, if a vegetable or celery or something like that is sort of has a bit of mold on it or has a bit of insect biting on it, some people actually know that. And just thinking about that, you're like, oh, you look at this, oh, it has a bit of, a worm has been eating it, or some insects have been biting on it, or there's a bit of a fungal infection. Oh, that's not good. Well, why is it not as good? It's because you're going to get damaged or infected by the fact that this bug ate it previously. It's not there anymore. Or there's a bit of a fungal thing on there. Okay, well, you can cut that out, right? So the fungus shouldn't be the problem. The bug shouldn't be the problem. But we sort of know this actually. It's like, oh, if it's been sort of eaten out, well, that means it's not good. What is actually happening there is that the plant actually increases the toxins and poison is directed towards those things to defend it. And so now that the plant is just more toxic in general. And so it ends up being bad for us. And so we've known that, oh, it's not good if it's been eaten by a bug. Well, why is that? Because there's more toxins in it, and that's something that we see. I'm curious to see what people, you've been doing this for decades, so what about the people around you? What about your family and friends and parents? And what have they been influenced by your example?
My parents were not influenced by my example. My dad, when he started to get sick, yeah, he did eat steak a few times, and he told me, I feel a lot better. I said, yeah, well, you should eat steak every day. But he wouldn't do it because he was still convinced that too much meat was bad for you. It would harden your arteries, you'd get heart disease, or maybe you would get cancer. My mother did not like meat at all. In fact, when she was younger, she was anemic. They used to give her liver, and this was back in the 1930s. And they knew back then that it would help, but she wouldn't eat it. She'd give it to her cat, the same way that I'd give the bread and stuff to the ducks.
Yeah.
But yeah, my parents didn't really listen to me. They thought I was a little crazy. My friends, in the beginning, they all thought I was nuts. But over time, I had one friend of mine who was a bodybuilder, and this was like in 2000. He went to the same diet that I was eating, which is basically a carnivore diet, because he was doing, bodybuilding, and he used steroids and all that to get big. But then he started having back problems, and he started having joint problems and wasn't feeling good. So he thought, well, it's not worth it. You go through all this work, and then you go to a contest and you barely place. You're going against all these steroid monsters. So he thought instead of going that extreme, he would just try to be lean and healthy. And he always struggled with gaining weight. But he would look at me and see me eating a bunch of food. I mean, I'd knock out 3 or 4 steaks, no problem. Fried chicken, cooked in lard, butter, and a bunch of eggs, sometimes a dozen eggs. And how do you not gain any weight? I don't know. So he started eating like me. He's been doing it for more than 20 years. I mean, it's 2000 is when he changed his diet. So yeah, it's been more than 20 years. He's 48 now, and he's in good health.
Wow.
I talk to him once in a while. He says, oh, I feel great. He lives up in Minnesota, so he doesn't get out like in the sun, but they do have a greenhouse, a real big greenhouse with tropical plants in it. So even in the wintertime, he can still, I guess, go into the tropics.
Yeah.
But I got another friend that I made about 10 years ago. He was morbidly obese. He's had heart bypass and just a complete mess. But he's actually, in fact, recently he's been eating raw ground beef. He was in a rehabilitation hospital and hadn't moved much for months. And he's walking around and driving around, and he says he feels better than ever. And he's the one that likes to follow Ken Berry. So, but he was one of those that ate a lot of baked goods, a lot of carbohydrates, and, a lot of sugary stuff. And he was able to break free from it. So I got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult, and especially for getting rid of the carbs in general, but sugar in particular, that seems to be very difficult for people. And yeah, so it's anytime you can break that addiction and get away, especially because most people just don't recognize that it is as bad as it is. And so they just don't think like, yeah, I don't need to do that. It's not really affecting me, even though they don't know the contrast. Whereas if they stop it, they'd see like, oh, wow, actually that was really affecting me quite significantly. And whereas, when you don't have a frame of reference, it's very hard to just make that leap of faith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's right. And the thing is, a lot of times, like my dad, he didn't want to eat anything sweet, but I kept telling him, I said, you eat a lot of bread, you eat pasta, that's still sugar. Oh, no, that's not sugar. He said, yes, it is. That's glucose. That's sugar. Oh, it can't be. Yeah, it is. It's sugar. I mean, at one time he was using fructose as a sweetener because it was low on the glycemic index. And I was like, isn't fructose the sweet stuff that comes out of fruit? Oh, it's from fruit. It must be good.
Yeah.
It's like when I was a kid, they'd give me apple juice and orange juice. They thought that was healthy. They had those commercials, the Florida Sunshine Tree with Anita Bryant, and then, she'd sing some song and go in the orange grove and, oh, what could be healthier than that? But when we had orange juice, it was usually a frozen block, a concentrate that you'd add to water. And I grew oranges, and I noticed that when you juice them, by the next day, you can't drink it. It's so oxidized and nasty, you just have to pour it out. So I'm thinking, what do they do to this juice to make it where it tastes good? It can be in the freezer for months and it tastes good. And yet the stuff that you get yourself fresh, it doesn't last but a few hours in the refrigerator.
Yeah. Like, I remember that those blocks of this solid juice concentrate. We used to have those as well. Yeah, those were funny. You sort of it's like rip the top off the can and just sort of.
Yeah, but my parents used to cut it with a knife. They'd cut it with a knife and then put the block in there and add some cold water to it. Yeah. And that was the orange juice.
Yeah, that's funny. I remember doing that. And I remember when we were kids, it would be rare that we would get the juice. But every now and then we would. And my parents were good about that. They kept sugar out of the house pretty well. And but that was one thing that we would have every now and then. But when we would make juice, because we never had sugar, like the kids would just be there piling. They would just be like just guzzling, just like, oh my God, oh that's so good, oh my God. And like we just pour it and it would be gone. There'd be a pitcher of juice made and it would be gone in less. It would be gone quicker than it took to like make the juice. And that was sort of the only sort of bottleneck in our juice experience, because it actually took longer to like make and mix and get all the juice out and stuff like that and stir it around than to drink it, because we just guzzle it down and like, oh, I don't want to like make all that again, and yeah, it's crazy how like addictive that is. But you just look at it, you look how kids just voraciously, oh my God, I have to like, have that. I mean, that's a bit, that should be a bit concerning.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was one of the few kids that didn't like sweet things. A lot of times in school, they'd give us candy or something as a treat, and I never liked candy, so I would usually feed it to the ducks. I'd break it in pieces and throw it to the ducks, and they'd gobble it up.
Now these ducks are just killing it with you. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things I like. I love ducks.
Yeah.
I mean, I got duck statues and figurines. I got ducks out in the yard. I'm a duck. I love ducks. I don't know why. Ever since I was a kid, every time I saw a duck, I was excited. I mean, they're cute. The ducks we have here are kind of ugly to most people. They're the Muscovy ducks. They're real big. They got the red stuff on their face, and they have that funny looking beak. And but the little ducklings are so cute. They're the cutest little things. It's just amazing. They're like live rubber duckies, and they run around, and they're really cute. But some people really hate the ducks, and they say, "Oh, we don't want to," because they poop everywhere. The ducks are like a pooping machine.
Yeah,
I mean, everywhere they go, there's duck poop.
Yeah,
but when I was a kid, I discovered that duck poop actually made my plants grow a lot better. So I would encourage them to come around, and I got the biggest banana plants in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Is just like people say, "Oh my God, this poop everywhere." It's like that's fertilizer. That's supposed to be there. Or like people like that's the thing. Okay, in neighborhoods, that's one thing. You don't want some dogs just crapping on your lawn or something like that. Fine for the aesthetics or whatever. Fine, but like when you're walking in the woods
or like at a park or something like that, and there's signs just like pick up, your dog. Like, are you out of your damn mind? Like, I mean, that's exactly where animals are supposed to poop, is in the woods. That's good for the environment. It's like, you're going to pick this up, you're going to put it in a plastic, non-biodegradable plastic bag, and you're going to put that in the trash, and it's going to go to a landfill. Like, are you out of your mind? Like, why is that a good thing? I mean, it's so silly. And I remember hiking when I was a kid, and we were camping, backpacking, and people were talking about how dirty humans were, and how, like, oh my God, like 60% of the bulk of our feces are bacteria. Like, oh my God. And so you would go into the woods, and you would pack out everything out. Right. And so this is like people that were like peeing into like bags and like carrying something. Like, that's disgusting, first of all. But they would also, like, with their feces as well, they'd pack it in, they got to pack it out. I'm like, why would you do that? Like, why is it? Oh, because it destroys the environment. So we're not an invasive alien species. We didn't like just come here from Mars and just everything we touch just is destroyed. Like, this is actually part of the environmental process, the ecosystem, where, like, we eat things, and then we defecate out nutrients that, plants and fungus and bacteria eat. And that's how they work, and it's so silly.
That's right. Well, the thing is, I mean, it's like me, I water my plants all the time. I go out by the banana tree and take a leak, and I've done it for years and hasn't killed anything. Like I said, I got the best looking banana plants in the neighborhood. People come over and like, what is that? So that's a banana. This thing is like 25 feet tall. I've never seen one that big. Well, between the ducks and me and all the compost and everything that's generated in nature all returns to the ground. That's like when we used to have cattle around here. Now it's all development. The cows would eat grass, they'd poop it out. It would rain, it would grow more grass. The land that had cows on it had much more grass than just the empty lots, which were just a couple of weeds, maybe a couple of bushes, and that was it. And the pasture was just all green because they're constantly eating this stuff, and bacteria are breaking it down, and they're pooping it out.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes it better for everyone. And I don't know if your friends are going to be too accepting of your bananas when you tell them that they're fed with your urine. But
well, I've had a few people say, well, I don't want it, but other people say, I don't care. Those are good bananas.
I mean,
compared to the Cavendish garbage you get in the store, this is just amazing. I don't even like fruit, but I'll eat the bananas occasionally. It's just, I like them when they're kind of green. I don't like them when they're too ripe. I'll take a bite out of it and spit it out because it's just, I can't eat it. So they get too ripe. I throw them to the ducks. The ducks will take care of it for me.
It always goes back to the ducks.
Yeah. Always back to the ducks. So, that's the other thing. When it comes to processed food, I have a term for that everybody that knows me laughs at. I call it duck food. The chips, the fries, whatever, the bread, that's all duck food.
Yeah.
So whatever they have that's going bad or they don't want, I said, bring it here and throw it to the ducks.
That's funny.
In fact, a friend of mine just gave me a bunch of pasta that had those little weevils in it. And I've been soaking that in water and giving it to the ducks.
That's funny. Yeah, weevils probably be pretty good for it.
Oh, they grab that first. That's the thing about ducks. If you throw down meat, bread, bugs, whatever, the first thing they'll go for is the bugs, then the meat, then the bread.
Nice.
So even they know what's good.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's cool, man. Well, hey, Rick, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you. It was great to talk to you finally face to face. So we've been sort of chatting back and forth, and it's been great. It's awesome to see people that have been doing this. I mean, just intuitively, just listening to their bodies and having such great health benefits. Growing like a beanstalk. After they started, and then just being in such good health since then, not going to a doctor in 30 years. I mean, I think that speaks for itself right there. You know? And
that's true.
Yeah. And so, it's really great to see, a lot of people do get worried. Oh, what about in 10 years? What about in 20 years? What about heart disease? What about colon cancer? What about all these things? And you can go through the studies, you can go through the literature, and you can go through the evidence, but it really, really, really helps when you see real life examples. We say, well, the Inuit and the Maasai, but maybe they're different genetically. Well, we have people here of European descent that are, doing this and not only surviving, but thriving. And so it's great to see your example, and I appreciate you taking the time to share that with us.
Of course.
Yeah.
And like you said, I haven't been to a doctor, and I'm the only person I know my height that doesn't have back trouble or any other aches and pains.
Point. Yeah, very good point. And I've had a bad back since I was 15 years old. And then for some reason, there was this magical period in my early to mid 20s. I had no back pain at all. And then I was down in California playing in the Super League down there with On Back in San Diego. And all of a sudden I'm like, my back I was still mostly eating meat, but I was just sort of incorporating a little bit of other stuff in there. So I was like, my back's hurt again. I was like, my back hasn't hurt in years. Like, what the hell is that? My back always hurts. And now my back doesn't hurt anymore.
Right.
Like,
I know so many people. In fact, everyone I know has at least had some back trouble. Yeah. And they always say to me, as tall as you are, your back doesn't bother you. I said, no, I've never had a back problem. Yeah. I don't have any joint pains. I've gone through my whole life somehow with avoiding all these chronic issues. They talk about IBS and they talk about bloating. I don't even know what bloating was until recently. Oh, when you feel like you're inflated. Oh, okay. They talk about they get bloating and they get and psoriasis and all these other skin problems, and they have to take lotions. You go to the average house, you look in the bathroom, open the medicine cabinet, it's got all kinds of pain relievers and creams and all this other stuff. You go in my bathroom, you open it up, it's empty. The only thing that's in there is some homemade soap, and that's it. And I'm so cheap, I make my own soap from lard or tallow and lye.
Or duck. Yeah.
Well, there's not enough fat on a Muscovy duck, but if there was, yeah, I do that too. But no, and that's the other thing. Like you said, I haven't been to a doctor. I may be ready to die tomorrow. I could just have a heart attack and boom, I'm gone. But I feel fine. And it's like I told my friends, I said, look, if I was really sick, I would think if I was going to have a heart attack, I wouldn't be able to run across the yard and grab a duck or climb stairs or unload and unload things, climb trees and all that. I'd be tired like some of the other people I know. They go up the stairs, they get tired. I know people that are in their 40s that are riding in the little cart in Walmart.
Yeah.
And that's pretty bad.
Especially in Florida.
Especially in Florida. Like when I go to the store, let's say I'm going to Winn-Dixie. I'm in and out of there in 5 minutes because what I'll do, I'll walk to the back of the store, see what they have in the meat section. If there's nothing there that I want, I leave. If there is something I want, I'll gather it up, go to the register, and I'm gone.
Maybe and I move on the way out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's, there's chickens running around the parking lot at the Winn-Dixie, but you can't catch them. They're hard to catch. Those things, they can outrun anybody.
Nice.
I've tried to grab them, but you'll never get them. Even with a net, you can't get them.
Yeah. There was there was a post that Dr. Baker did just in the last couple of days. It was a picture of this guy, forget his name. He was wearing all this nice finery, sitting in this fancy chair. And so this is so-and-so. He was the fattest man in the world in 18.
I saw that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. People would pay money to come see this guy just to look at him like, oh my God, what is that? It was a spectacle. And so he actually made his living by just being fat to look at. And you look at this and the caption was like, it's the fattest man in 1989 or 1890. And this guy wouldn't even be the third fattest person at Walmart today.
That's it. I mean, that would be like going to the Heart Attack Grill. You see that if you're over 350 pounds, you eat for free. Jeez. They had some people there was like 500 or 600 pounds. And I know someone that's over 600 pounds. Good. I have no idea how he can walk out of his house.
Poor bastard.
When he tries to get in and out of his truck, the thing goes sideways. I mean, it's unbelievable. I think to myself, how could anyone get that fat? I could never understand. Even when I was a kid, I used to see fat people. How do they get so fat? Doesn't it bother them? Don't they feel like pain or they don't feel good or whatever? But I guess they just keep feeding their face and get fatter and fatter until they either croak or they end up in a nursing home.
Well, that's the thing, we get very disordered eating because we've been told to eat the wrong thing for so long. And a lot of these people, it's not that they've, that they're out, obviously not out to do that to themselves. But, some people say, well, they're just not listening to the guidelines. They're not listening to the guidelines. A lot of these people are. A lot of these people are listening to the guidelines and they're trying to, eat less, move more and do all that sort of stuff. And it's not working. And that's because the guidelines are bad and the recommendations are bad. And so a lot of times, people say, oh, well, people just don't listen to doctors. No, the problem is that they did. And the advice was bad. And so you thankfully didn't listen to that advice. And so for you, it's very easy. Like, I've never had that problem. I eat as much as I want. Like, how is that even possible? And that's the thing is that when you're eating a carnivore diet, it really is difficult to do that, And so, but when you're eating carbohydrates, that just changes your metabolism, puts you into fat storage metabolism as opposed to fat burning metabolism. And then you slow down your metabolism on top of that. And it becomes addictive because you disrupt your hunger signals. And so you think you're starving all the time. And so you have to eat. So you're eating until you're satiated. And where you are, they're eating until they're they're probably not even finishing satiation. They're getting more like, I'm just hungry all the time. And that's because of that. And it's just really sad.
That's what I've noticed. When you eat with someone that's obese like that, they don't eat as much as I do. I eat sometimes 3 times as much. I've had, I don't even believe in calories. I think that's a bunch of nonsense. It's like Barkay was talking about, that calories are not an accurate measurement of food. And I thought, because you're not burning it. And if I calculate calories, sometimes I was eating 6,000 calories a day for weeks at a time, and I never gained a single pound.
Yeah.
I said, well, you can't outrun your fork. Eat less and move more doesn't make sense.
No. And so, I agree with you. And, the thing is too, is that like how ridiculously simplistic is that, that every single bioorganic molecule in all the different fats, all the different kinds of fats, saturated fats, unsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats, short chain, medium chain, long chain, very long chain, and all the different proteins, amino acids, and carbohydrates, that all of these things, all it boils down to is 4 calories per gram or 9 calories per gram. That's it. That's the only thing that's the only chemical process going on in your body, is just that numerical depiction of their caloric value. Dumb. That is dumb, and the problem is that a lot of these dumb comments are coming from people who have actually taken biochemistry or organic chemistry and should damn well know better. Like these chemical compounds have very specific and unique chemical reactions in your body. It does not just come down to how many calories that come out of it if you burn it in a flask. That's ridiculous. And so, of course, that's not the case, and it's much more complicated than that. And yes, you have a certain amount of energy that your body uses, and you have an excess of that. You might store it in your fat. That is true. However, it's way more complex than that. It is not that simple.
Well, it's like you said. Now, I didn't understand any of that, but what I did, like when I was in high school, what happened was we had, I think they made a calorimeter out of a cup, and I forget what the technique was, but when I realized what it was, I said, well, is this the way they calculate calories? He says, yeah. I thought a bomb calorimeter was something that, like I used to like to make explosives myself. So I thought, oh, you blow it up. Like, no, it's an enclosed system. So I thought to myself, wait a minute, if it's an enclosed system, a human is not an enclosed system. We give off heat, we expend energy. Some of the food doesn't get digested. It goes out the other end. And then I start thinking about, wait a minute, fat, if you burn it, is going to have more heat than if you burn a piece of bread. So by mass, it seems like it doesn't make sense because, I can run my truck on lard, I can run it on tallow, but I can't run it on bread. There's not enough energy density. By the time you pack it down, it's mostly carbon. So to me, it just seemed like none of it made any sense. And then, of course, I didn't know until recently. It's only been the last couple of years that I've taken time to watch people like you and look online and see what's going on. It's like, well, that's nothing like what we were told. And it makes sense, like you said, because you see people that don't eat much, but they graze all day and they get fat because they keep stimulating this fat storage hormone, and they just keep putting on weight. And they keep telling them, oh, cut the fat, exercise more. Well, how are you going to exercise when you're big and fat? You can barely move. You're not going to go run a marathon when you can barely walk to the front door. You have to start in the kitchen, and then you can think about the gym.
Well, even when when I was playing, sports, rugby, when I had the time, there would be a time where I would just feel miserable, and and I'd force myself to get out because training was starting and we had to get going, but I just feel like garbage, and I wasn't like very overweight or but I was out of shape and I wasn't feeling great, and even though I would do stuff during the off season, and quite often I would play summer sevens and things like that. So I'd always be in good shape. But even just like taking a couple of weeks off working out, I'd see a big dip in how I was feeling when I was not doing carnivore. And then, when I sort of got back onto this, when I was coming back from Bangladesh, And I was trying to get back in shape, and I was cutting calories, and I was just limited amounts of meat, no fat, and a lot of greens. And I was just trying to get in shape and lose weight. And I was like, oh, I'm just not feeling good. And I'm like, not really ready to go. I didn't feel ready to go back to rugby practice. I'm like, oh, it's just not, I'm going to do some of my own work first before I go and embarrass myself at practice and just die.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 weeks after I started Carnivore, I just felt like a different person. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go play some rugby. Like this, I feel great. Let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though I hadn't worked out, really hadn't run, certainly hadn't sprinted or played a full game in at least a year, really hadn't been like game, like fit in a couple of years. I was out there just at a dead sprint, looking out of shape. And I was out of shape, but even out of shape with the right fuel, my body was working I could keep up with everyone else who'd been training sort of that whole season that I was gone, or half season. And I felt great. And, we did a fitness test a couple of weeks into it. And I'm still out of shape. I'm still not at the top of where I should be. I came in the top 5 out of 90 people. And these people had all been working out regularly on a professional rugby team for several months when I was gone. And so, it makes a massive, massive difference.
Yeah. And see, I don't play any sports. I don't do exercise. I hate exercise. But what I do a lot of physical work. And especially when I was younger, we used to do a lot of warehouse cleanouts and building cleanouts. And I had several friends that were into bodybuilding. They all look fantastic. They got the physique, they look great. I wish I could look like that. But when it came to actually working, a lot of them, it was sort of like they were good at first, and then it just sort of the energy went down. Oh, I got to have something to eat. I don't feel good. And meanwhile, I'm going back and forth, loading the truck, moving this, moving that. No problem. So how do you do it? How can someone as skinny as you get all this work done? I don't know. Maybe it was a diet. I didn't think about it at the time.
Yeah. Well, maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm just not a little bitch. I don't know. Maybe think about that,
Maybe.
But, all right, Rick. Well, it's been great talking to you.
Yep.
Absolutely great meeting you. And, thanks for taking the time. You're not really on social media. You don't really have anything to do. Is there anywhere where people can contact you or follow you if they want to, or you like to keep
I do have the YouTube channel, which is I call it Charger Mopar because I'm a big time car guy. I haven't posted many videos. I used to have a lot more. Some got deleted, but I'm going to start making some more videos. I may start another channel. I've been kind of shocked because the first interview I had was with Joey, and I just can't believe how many people have watched that video. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Cool.
Thousands and thousands.
Yeah. That's exciting. Well, that's cool, man. Well, yeah, we'll put up your link for your YouTube channel and and get started putting up some videos. I'm sure people will check it out.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm working on it. I didn't even think it was a thing, but I guess it is. And you might be right. I may be one of the people out there that's been doing this longer than anybody else.
You do it. Well, I think as far as Europeans, European descent people in America, you're definitely going to be up there. I don't know of anyone else who's been doing it longer than you have. There's like the Bear Ozlowski or Osley, or I forget his full name, but he was like the sound engineer for the Grateful Dead for like decades, and he sort of started basically around the time you did, sort of in teenage years, and he was doing it for a solid 50 years. And he died in a car accident, but he was in great health at that point. And he's done a lot of, he's written a lot of articles and a lot of things in the different carnivore Facebook groups. It just came out of nowhere. And just when people started discovering this and discovering people with getting really healthy with this, he was just like, yeah, I've actually been doing this for 50 years. And these are my thoughts. And he just said, and it's very, very, very replete with extremely well thought out arguments and thoughts to do with the health and carnivore diet. Yeah. So it's good. People can they're still archived around the internet. People can look that up.
That's good to know because like I said, until the last couple of years, I didn't even think it was a thing. I thought it was just me being stubborn like I always am. But no, I guess there's other people doing it. There's you, and you mentioned some examples. Like you said, Sean Baker. I think he's in Miami now. I think he was here.
Well, I think he splits time down in Florida anyway. He lives up in Washington State, just north of Seattle. And,
right.
But I think he has like he's looking at relocating to Florida potentially, but he does spend time down there. I know that.
Yeah. I haven't seen him, but there's not too many people that are 6'5" like him or 6'6" like me. There's a lot of short people here.
Yeah. Yeah. Sean's a big guy. Yeah.
Well, he's big.
Yeah.
He's a lot bigger than me because I only weigh 190 pounds. He weighs like 250 or something. He's huge.
Yeah. 250, 260. I think like he just posted something where he just like ate like 10 pounds of meat in a day.
There you go.
And, but
hey, if I could afford it, I could eat easily 5 or 6 pounds of meat. No problem.
We just got to get faster, man. Start catching those iguanas.
Well, that's true. But I'm thinking about steak. Once I move out of here and I'm in the country somewhere, I might as well just buy the whole cow and process it myself rather than having to go to a butcher or go through a processing plant. Just have like a little pasture set up, get a cow or two and feed them for a while. And then when the time comes, get your freezer full.
Yeah, you feed them, they feed you. I think that's exactly what I'm going to do at some point as well. I honestly can't wait until I sort of get to that point where I'm just like, sort of like just living on the land, self-sufficient, and just don't have to worry about all that.
That's the other thing I wanted to do for years. I started to get into it, but the problem is here in Florida, it seems like development is the big thing. Every piece of land here is being filled with houses and shopping centers and all kinds of nonsense. But I would have done it years ago, but I had to take care of my parents for about almost 10 years. But now I'm going to try to move forward, try to find a place to go to, because, for those of us that eat meat, I think the best place to live is in the country. Living near a city is not an advantage for us.
No, definitely not. That's cool. All right, man. Well, good luck with that.
Right.
And great. Okay. And we'll see you later.
All right.
Well, bye, buddy. Thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast.